eternity.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started?
Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, by all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
downloaded to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome to Talk Now Radio, listener-supported radio, where no topic is taboo, and your support keeps it that way. We're brought to you by Revolution Radio, which is also listener-supported radio, where information never sleeps. And today, we're going to be talking to ancient history researcher and co-author of Piso Christ, Jay Gallus, and we're going to be talking about who invented Christianity and who was the true authors of the New Testament. So, y'all folks, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. We'd like to remind everybody real quick, to check out the donation meters over here. We couldn't keep the show on the air, or I couldn't keep mine over at Talk Now on the air without the support of listeners, without actually going to sponsors. And then when that happens, they have control over what you guys hear. So, be sure to support us and keep us on the air so you can keep getting the kind of information that you don't get in the mainstream media. So, Jay, how you doing today?
Well, hello, Royce. I'm doing quite fine. And how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I got to tell you, though, Jay, I've done quite a bit of reading since we last talked. I've finished Piso Christ, but I've also read some other works that I've found online on very similar topics, and this is really kind of a multifaceted field, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. You're going to find so many different bits and pieces about it almost everywhere you go. But the absolute, when you get down to the absolute fact of the matter, it's all going to turn out to be one thing, and that is, of course, when you were talking about the New Testament, and that is how that all came about. And before I go on any further, I will state emphatically it did not happen. It's not true. It never happened. There's no possible way that it could happen in the way it was written in the Bible. And if anybody thinks that something this floated down out of the air and impregnated a woman, I think they need to see somebody who can help them out a little bit. But that's what I found, and I and my literary partner Roman Piso did put together the book Piso Christ, which explains exactly who the person was that was behind the writing of the NT, completely behind it.
Okay.
What was the other things that you were talking about?
As far as what? Who founded Christianity?
Is that what you're talking about now?
That's what, I was talking about. Unless I was accidentally talking out loud for a minute while you were talking. If I was, I apologize for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, why don't you ask me a question or two, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, like I said, I was reading your book, and you've got into some pretty in-depth research about the New Testament and who wrote it. And I think a good place to start might be, why don't you first tell the listeners what caught yours and your literary partner Piso's attention, actually Roman is his first name, to make y'all want to go into this kind of research and write this kind of a book?
Well, I can't really speak that far back for Roman because I don't really know what his original reason for going into this was. I suppose it's simply that he never did believe in the story, and perhaps he read a lot of things like people are reading now and decided to go further and to do some more investigative research. As for myself, I would say that this whole thing started for me probably when I was about 12 years old. And that was the very first time I had ever seen a Bible. And it was given to me by a Baptist deacon and who was trying to pull me into his church. That's another story. If you like, I could tell you about that. But I think that when I got that Bible, I paid no attention to it whatsoever. I just looked at it and well, okay. So I put it up on a shelf. I believe it was in the living room of the house. And it sat there for maybe 3 months. And I recall that one day it was raining and I wasn't out to do anything. And I think that might have been on a Sunday. And I just picked up that book and said, I think I'll read this. And I started reading. And I only read a few pages before I just thought, somebody's made a very big mistake here, or they're just crazy, you know. And that was, you know, and I just put it down and never picked it up for. It was probably maybe like 3 or 4 months later or so, as I got more involved in that Baptist church, and I decided to read it.
Well, yeah, I found from my own personal experience, you don't have to get 3 or 4 pages into it before you start noticing, shall we say, oddities, things like the similarities between the line of Seth and the line of Cain in the names, and the first immediate descendants right after Adam, and and Cain and Seth. There, you'd almost think one tribe was trying to mimic another, and the oddity of the 2 different creations. One in the first chapter of Genesis, the other in the second chapter of Genesis. And there's differences between both of these creation stories. So, you don't have to get far into it to notice this stuff.
That's true. That was the way it was with me. I think I probably read about 3 or 4 pages of Genesis when I thought this is really ridiculous. But I did go on to read it, and as you said, there's so many abnormalities, let's say, in that book. And I can tell you that I don't think I've ever found a straightforward, honest statement in the entire book. And I've read it 2 or 3 times. Well, I've read it a couple of times and then read it another 3 times over, I'm sure, by going to reading, bits and pieces and chapters here and there. And I went through it a great deal while we were putting the book together as well. And it's I know for a fact there's another man that has a book out. I think you might know, or you might have heard of him, and maybe I think anyone listening might like to know this. His name is Joseph Atwill, and he wrote a book called Caesar's Messiah, and that's a magnificent book. And one of the things he mentions in the book, and that has been my line of thought before I read his book, was that the people who wrote the OT, the Old Testament, some of those people who originally started were royal people. They were not your ordinary goat herders walking around with a piece of cheese and a little sip of wine. They're trying to stay alive out there while they watch the sheep.
Right.
They couldn't read or write.
You and Ralph Gallus and Joseph Atwill, I think all 3 said they were pharaohs. Yes, of course. They were. The guy who put together Genesis was a pharaoh, and part of his name was Adam, and that's why he used Adam. But that's a long story there, and it just the whole book just goes on and on and on, and you don't ever find any real truth in it. But what I was getting at about the book called Caesar's Messiah is that Joseph Atwill pointed out something that I had always thought, and that is the high priest of Judaism. Let's say going back even before the first century CE, many people call that AD, I use CE, and going way back before then, those people knew that story wasn't true. They knew none of it was true. But why did they write it? Why were they teaching it to the people? Well, you've got to think about the people they were dealing with, just as the people that the makers of Christianity were dealing with when they first introduced that to the public. They were dealing with some extremely ignorant people. I mean, it's not like today. You find stupid people today, and you still find some very ignorant people today, but not like they were back in those days, going back 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Some of those people would probably see the sun come up in the morning and wonder what it was, and then in the evening they'd see the moon floating around. They would probably run and hide under the house or something. They didn't know about those things. So it was easy to use weather conditions and just about any other kind of superstition in order to fool the ignorant people. So, but he said, Atwill went on to say that at no time would the people who wrote that OT story, and particularly the Jewish priests, as they were teaching it to the people, they never believed it. They knew not a word of it was true. But what they used it for was to try to give their people courage to carry on, not give up,
to fight, to stay as a people and as a tribe, if you wish, and also for their fighting warriors to think that it didn't matter if they died because God was going to take care of them. Or
kind of like the Muslims tell their guys that they're going to go to heaven and have their own harem, in other words. Similar principle.
If you fly an airplane into a building, you get 72 virgins or something like that. Yeah, right. But so Joseph Atwell put that in his book, and I'm glad he did, because he said it. Even the people who were teaching it, the Jewish people were teaching it in Judaism, they didn't believe what they were teaching. They knew it wasn't true. But what would have happened had they told their people that, hey, everything we've been telling you is a lie? Well, first of all, they would probably have been killed, but it would have caused havoc throughout that nation. So they just continued to tell them that, and they continue to preach it today. And you've got people today in Judaism, they're very different from the old scholars of many years ago. And they really believe some of that stuff. They really do. And then many people just do it because it's a habit. So,
well, I was going to say a minute ago that, funny you should mention Joseph Atwell, because I just interviewed him for about 1 hour last night on his book, Caesar's Messiah.
Really?
Yeah. Very interesting show, I thought. And, the man had a whole lot to say, a lot of, good, worthwhile information he puts out there. I never got to see his book. I know he's planning on getting another book out in the near future. He mentioned the title, but I'll be honest with you, that one didn't stick with me.
Yeah, I know he's been working on another book, and you see, Joe Atwell lives about, by car, I guess it's about maybe 2.5 hours, about 2.5 hours north of me, and on the coast of California. And he lives up near in the Santa Barbara area. Well, I'm further south, out on the peninsula. But that book, Caesar's Messiah, is a very good book. And the thing about Joseph Atwell is that I never met the man personally, but I know about him, and I'm sure that the two of us were in Japan, living in the very, very near to one another at the very same time. But I'd heard his name and knew of him, but I had never met him. And he was actually a member of the Jesuit priest organization. And there was a school called St. Joseph's College in Yokohama, Japan, in what is called Nakaku, the Central Ward of Yokohama. And that's he taught there, I think, for several years. And I think that may have been the time when somehow he found out about Josephus. And I believe that's what opened his mind. You see, the priest are taught and trained, I guess they're indoctrinated, not to read the Josephus's works, and not to read Antoninus's works, and all of the other ancient writers. They don't want people to read that. They call that heresy. And so they keep teaching. They push that into their mind. Pardon?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I find it fascinating that you would mention this very thing when, for one thing, you can walk into any church in America and you'll hear them say, don't read this, that, and the other thing. It's heresy. So you know what's going on today. But I was just found a book by Edward Henry, a friend of Tex Myers, about uncovering the mystery of Babylon. And in it, he talks about the ancient Jews. There was like our church today, you have the higher-ups that know all the secrets, and then you got the congregation that's kept in the dark. Mm-hmm. And that they would also say, you get your information from the, not from the Torah, but from our oral tradition, in other words. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the Bible, that's just for the masses. That's not something that you need to know. The true doctrine we have in the Kabbalah, in other words. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, you're talking about a pattern that happened in the Old Testament church and the church at Rome, and it's still happening today.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You see, here's the thing about the Bible now. You'll find that specifically in what you just mentioned, where they don't tell you to read the Bible and so much. particularly in the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church hardly ever mentions the Bible. And go to any Mass, and you don't find them mentioning the Bible. And they do not encourage anyone to use Bibles. They do not give you Bibles. As all of other Christian religions, they're all there out on the street corners handing out Bibles to you. You go to a church and they might walk up to you and you don't have a Bible and you're there as a guest or whatever. Somebody will find a Bible and put it in your hands. Here you are. And they'll tell you where the preacher is going to read from and so forth that day. But they don't do that in the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church does not want you to read the Bible. If you read the Bible, you might become smart. You might find out what they're doing is nothing but a lie. And so what they do, they make this, what they call the Missal. That's a little book. I think it's printed once a year. And it's, I don't know where they print this. They may have more than one printing shop, but they all seem to be the same. They all seem to be printed out and put out for every year's edition. Is usually put out at about the same time for all of the churches. And those little books are usually read, and they're placed in the little book holders on the back of the seats that would be in front of you as you're sitting in a pew. And you just reach in there, and every Sunday for the Mass, the priest has already decided. Well, he doesn't decide. That's already decided for him by Rome. Rome, the people in Rome design that every year, and every priest is going to use that every Sunday, and it has every date, every Sunday in it, and it every week.
And they'll tell you what to believe from the pulpit.
Well, and that is what the priest is going to talk about. They all are going to do it together, so that everybody thinks, oh, yeah, that must be the truth. Well, yeah, that's what he said, too. It must be so. Yeah, well, that's all part of the scheme. But they don't, you see, they don't tell you open your Bible to chapter such and such, a book so and so, and verse this or that. They just tell you to open up the Missal to the Sunday, the such and such a date of the year, and there you are. And then they'll have somebody come up and read that, and then the priest is going to give a little sermon about it and stand there and lie as much as you possibly can. And I actually told one priest when there was one little story in the Missal one day. I went to those churches and just to see what was going on. And I've had many discussions with priests. I've talked to archbishops, and when I say archbishops, I actually knew personally and discussed several times the Bible and all the other things involved in Christianity with the archbishop who was actually the ambassador of the Vatican in the country in which he was working, and I was there at the time, and this was Japan. And we had many discussions, but they don't want you to. They really don't want you to know what's in the Bible. They really don't.
Well, that was pretty obvious back in the Renaissance when they used to kill people for passing out Bibles.
Well, the Renaissance, they were killing people for passing out Bibles. Who were doing that?
William Tinsdale was doing it for one.
Who was he?
You never heard of William Tinsdale?
Gensfield?
Tinsdale with a T.
I don't know if I have or not.
Oh, he was one of the first people to write a Bible in English.
I get you. I see. Yeah, well, I don't know I don't believe he was Catholic, though.
No, I don't think he was. I think he was Protestant, but he was still, from what I heard, persecuted and killed for doing it, which makes it quite obvious they did not want the public having the Bible, even back then.
There you go. So the Rome decided. Well, they had a lot of power then. See, they had the Vatican had all the power in the world at that time. They were telling governments what they should do. There were governments at that time that wouldn't even pass a law unless they talked to the Pope to find out if he thought it was okay to do it. And I said, well, what's the use of having your own government if you're going to go and have some guy that only, a bunch of old men who some of them are just sitting there dribbling all over themselves, who decided he was going to be the leader of their church, and now he's going to be the leader of your country and every other country too? That doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I'm sure that it probably was someone in the Catholic Church that decided he had to go because he was beginning to teach the ignorant people. They don't want people to be smart. They don't want you to be smart. And if you ever have a chance to have a discussion with a priest, and if he's fairly good talker and knows pretty well what he's talking about, but he's going to be lying. He's either going to be lying or he doesn't know what he's talking about. And but when you try to insert your views or make a statement about what he might have just said, then they're going to try to cut you off. But when that happens, don't allow it to happen. You just fight back and no. You said something, and I'm going to asking you this, and I want an answer now. I don't want to hear any more on. I want your answer, and they can't do it. They can't give you that answer. They will fight. They will fight like crazy not to have to give you an answer.
Yeah, and, something else they'll do is they'll try to revert you right back to the Bible. So you see it says right here, and they don't even bother to mention, is it their interpretation of the Bible, or was that a later implantation into the Bible? And they have no idea the history of the Bible when they revert you back to it.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, you're going to find that mostly among the Protestants, particularly the evangelicals. They're always referring to it says, because the Bible says here, and the Bible says there, and it says this in Isaiah, and it says this in someplace else. But where the Catholic priests, they might try if that's their only way out. I've had them do that with me. When their only way out was to try to tell me, you have to read the book of Jude, and then you will see what I'm talking about, you see. But when you get deeper into the book of Jude, there are some things in there that they do not want to talk about. And when you start hitting them with that, they're ready to say, aren't you ready for a cup of coffee or something? Oh, yeah, let's go get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, let's change the subject.
Oh, yeah, sure. But they will use, the priest will use the Bible in an argument if he feels he can get away with it and maybe shut you up. But he's not going to generally not going to bring the Bible up initially, because they don't. I don't think they know very much about it. They have their own books and that they use to indoctrinate these young priests. I was absolutely flabbergasted to learn that they were actually told and instructed in the seminar when they first go into the seminar. That was one of the first things that they were told. You will not have this or that or this. All the various types of materials that they did not want them to read. You will never have it now while you're undergoing study to be a priest, and if you do become ordained as a priest, you will never read it because it's heresy. And if you read it and you're caught, you will be ejected from the Catholic Church. So
and of course, the Catholic Church determines what heresy is.
Oh, of course, that's it. And that's I actually found this out from a priest who is actually works in Ireland, and he comes here to Southern California every year for about a month. I think usually in July, and actually he takes about 2 months off every year, and he's here for a month to maybe 6 weeks sometimes, and then he'll go see his sister. I think she lives in New Zealand. He'll stay maybe a week or two there, and then he'll fly back to Dublin. And I was out having a dinner with him. This was, I think, about 3 years ago, maybe. The last time I met with him. I used to meet with him every year, but somehow my schedule has not been the same as his. So I haven't been able to meet up with him for about 3 years. But I've known this man for probably 11 to 12 years. And we were having dinner, and we were suddenly, I don't know why this came up, but we were just talking, and I asked him, he must have said something, and I asked him, had he ever read the ancient authors? And he said, which authors are you referring to? So when I said Josephus, he just sort of backed away from me. He leaned away. And then I mentioned Antoninus, and he just stared at me, and I kept mentioning several names, and he said, oh, and he says to me, have you read those? I said, yes, I have. And I said, have you? You have, of course. I'm sure you have, haven't you? And he said, oh, no. He said, we are not allowed to read those. And now this priest is about 55 years old. And he's a Jesuit as well. He's one of their, I guess he's a professor at one of the universities in Ireland. So they definitely don't want to let the priest find out the truth.
Okay. Now, in the chat room, Patrick Celtic recommended everybody, when he heard you talking about Joseph Atwell's book, he recommended also Jesus with Scissor Caesar by Francisco Carrata. Have you ever heard of that book by any chance?
Jesus was what?
Caesar.
He was Caesar.
Yeah.
Jesus was an emperor.
Well, what he put down was the title of the book was Jesus was Caesar, and it was written by Francisco Carrata. I never heard of the book until today, so I'm assuming from your reaction you haven't.
This is a new book you're talking about.
No, I got the impression it was an old one. I'm not sure.
And the name of it is Jesus was Caesar.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, it probably came out maybe after Atwell put out his book. I think perhaps it did.
That's a possibility. Like I say, I never heard of it myself, but I'm going to check into it and see what's in it and what have you. I might have the guy on the show if he's still alive, because I don't know when it come out, so I can't say.
I think Atwell first published the book under another name. If I'm not mistaken, gee, I don't hold me to this, but I think it was something like the Roman involvement in making Christianity, I believe, something like that, or writing the Roman involvement in writing the New Testament. And when he turned it into the publisher, apparently someone there suggested he changed it. He did put it out, but then I think the book was taken from his first publisher, and another publisher took it over, and the second one decided that the title of the book was not attractive enough. They had to have something that was really going to hit people over the head, so they said, well, why don't we just call it Caesar's Messiah? So that's how they came up with that name. A very good name, by the way. And it's a very good name for that book, because Caesar's Messiah indicates that one of the emperors was the person who wrote the New Testament. Of course, he did not write it, but Josephus, the man known as Josephus, did. He wrote the New Testament together with his three last living sons. His oldest son, Alexander, was killed in his very early 20s, and Pliny the Younger was also involved in it. And, of course, with the cooperation of the ruling higher up royalty at the time. And there were some people who did not want it done. When it first started off, it was Nero. Actually, this man, as I keep mentioning Josephus, the man who wrote as Josephus, he was actually Roman royalty. And he was Jewish only on his mother's side of the family. His mother was the great-granddaughter of the Herod the Great. And he may have been born in Judea. He may have used some type of a Jewish name, such as Matthias or something of that sort. But his father was a member of one of the high aristocratic families of the Roman aristocracy.
So in that marriage, you had a bonding of Jewish and Roman aristocracy into one family, kind of like starting a whole fresh lineage.
Well, yes, of course. And when you get further into it, you'll find out that Herod the Great, and then the family was known as the Herods. And you will find that the Herods and most of the emperors, those who supported the making of Christianity, were also related to Herod's family. They were all cousins.
And I'm glad I heard you say that, because I have all my life pronounced it Herod.
Herod, yeah.
So now I know the correct pronunciation.
Yeah, the family would be known, as a group, they would be known as the Herodians. And you will find that in the book of Romans, as the youngest son of Josephus, the man. By the way, that man who wrote as Josephus, his name was Marcus Arius Calpurnius Piso. His father was a senator during the reign of Nero, and he was the one who wrote. And it could have been also his father as well. I'm talking about Josephus' father's grandfather. Father. So Josephus' father, his name was Gaius. He probably wrote the first book, which is like the prototype of today's Mark, and it was called Marcus. Marcus. I believe in Germany it was just called Q. And I think the book came out sometime probably in the early 60s CE. And the idea was that, and this other individual, Seneca, people who know ancient history, you will know the name Seneca. He was a historian, a very, very talented man. And if you were to read what he has written, then you would be reading how to make a Catholic Church and how to do all the things that are done in the Catholic Church today before the Church was ever made. And so when they wrote this book, Marcus, they wanted to pass it on because to the Judeans. Now, there was people want to ask me many times, why would they do that? Why would they write a book and give it to the Judeans and say that God, their God, the Jewish God, had made a son and they should change and worship that son? Well, the problem was that at the time, if you study the history very closely, you'll find out at that time, many of there were probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about maybe 10 to 15 million Jews at that time, and because so many of them had been killed off by the Romans just by the millions, but they had nothing in Judea anymore. Rome had stripped it completely bare. You know, they had taxed the people just out of house, home, and everything else. And the ones that were the men that were strong enough and healthy enough, yet they just hauled them off and put them into gladiatorial combat, or just fodder for the guys who really know how to kill people, I guess. But the Judeans. I lost my train of thought here just for a moment. What was I telling you? I'm telling you about
what the Romans used to do with some of the prisoners they had, like put them in the gladiatorial rings, and I think some of them they put them to work as slaves as well. But what else?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got off track a little bit by that because I was talking about why the Pisos, the original Arius Piso's father, was instrumental in writing the first book called Marcus, which was a prototype of today's Mark. And the reason was because so many of the Jews had left Judea, and they were all, and probably there were probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2 to 3 million Jews living right in and around Rome at that time, because that's where they could make a living. They had nothing left in Judea, so they tried to go where the money was, I suppose. And as such, they brought their religion with them, of course. But, you see, there were a lot of very ignorant people in and around Rome. And all the slaves and the people who worked in homes and the people who did the cooking and whatever they were being used for. Most of those people probably hardly knew what their name was. But the aristocrats started to notice that the Judeans were bringing the slaves and the other ignorant masses into their temple or to their synagogues and indoctrinating them into Judaism. Now, the thing there that they were afraid of was the Pharisees. The Pharisees were really the leader of the Judean people at the time, and they were their warriors. They were the ones that would never give up. They were the ones that would never accept that lie about Jesus. And many of them died, millions of them died, but they never accepted it because they knew it wasn't true. But they became afraid. The Roman aristocracy became afraid that if they had enough slaves, and some of those people were in the Roman military, if enough of them had converted to Judaism, from whatever else they might have been believing in before, then what would happen if a war came along again between Rome and the Pharisees? And if
Pharisees could win if they was outnumbered.
Well, the Pharisees, they were afraid that the Pharisees might tell those ignorant people, now you must fight for Judaism, you must fight for the Pharisees. Rome would have lost. They would have had too many people against them, and their own soldiers would have turned against them. So they had to try to put a stop to it, and that's why they came up with this story about Jesus. And the idea for this was to pass it to the Jewish people and have them, believe the story, and for them to say, oh, well, now Jehovah has had a son, and now he's transferred the power over to his son, so now we should abide by what the son wants us to do. That's what they wanted to do. So they would then pacify the Pharisees, basically the Pharisees, and then they wouldn't have to fight them so much. They wouldn't have anything to worry about. And another thing, the reason that they wanted to put out that NT, and the reason they finally did, was one of their main purposes was to conserve the age-old usage of slaves that Rome fed upon and became rich upon. And they did not want to let that go. But the Judeans hated that, and they wanted to destroy slavery. But the Romans did not want that to be done. And all of those wars that came about between the Romans and the Jews, they were all, these wars were instigated and provoked. They actually provoked by the Romans. Arius Calpurnius Piso himself was in the year of 70 CE. He was at Jerusalem tearing down the temple together with Titus, who later became Emperor Titus. That was Vespasian's first son. And that's why he knew so much. And if you read his works, you read it, and it's like as if you are right there. And how could this man know such details by just writing a story and not having been there? He was there all the time, and he was involved in doing a lot of the things, or most of the things he wrote about in his works, about the Jewish wars. So that's the reason why he knew so much about it. And then he turned around, and what is in the NT, you will find it in his writings, in the Jewish wars and in the Jewish antiquities. It's a little bit different, but it's the same. He got it all from the war. It's like comic parody of the Great War. That's what it really is.
Well, I think one of the things we might want to mention to the listeners, because I don't think all everybody around is aware of this here. A lot of people don't really look into history books very much. Mm-hmm. But in all honesty, the Romans were latecomers onto the scene. They didn't really exist until about the time the Jews went into the Babylonian captivity, somewhere close to that. I'm bringing this here up because I can't help but speculate if there was anything in with the Jewish Babylonian captivity that could have helped spawn Rome in the first place.
Why would the Jews of Babylonian spawn the Romans?
No, what I'm talking about, like when the Jews went into captivity, maybe not all of them were captured, and some of them started that Romulus and Remus story as a founding for a whole new entire country and a whole new people culture.
Oh no, I don't think that the Jewish people at the time had anything to do with that. That was a totally different thing.
Well, it was just speculation.
Yeah, right. The original start of the actual Roman people today, known as the Italian people, come from the Etruscans. The Etruscans, excuse me, they were the first Romans actually, but they didn't call themselves Romans. I don't know what they were, just calling themselves Etruscans. And there are many of those old families that are descendants of the original Italians or the original Etruscans. They're still there, and they look somewhat different from your average Italian. They're rougher, harsher-looking people and hard-working people. Most of them today are working in the grape fields and the grape vineyards and so forth, farming, etc. And but they're still there. But they only had a small part of Italy. But when the Romans came in from different areas, and they were a bunch of people from various areas, and they decided that they wanted to have more land, so they just went in and took it. And when they found out they had a little more power, they decided, well, they weren't going to let the Etruscans keep their land unless they abide by the new laws that the Romans decided to put into place. That's what happened.
That's strangely reminiscent of what happened with the Hyksos and the Egyptians, isn't it?
With what? The Egyptians and who?
And the Hyksos. They just kind of, come into Egypt there and made friends with the pharaohs and infiltrated them, and the next thing you know, they were ruling Egypt.
Yeah, They got the opportunity to, I think, intermarry somewhere, and gradually over some years they got
right.
More
I'm just saying what you're talking about happened with the Etruscans and the Romans sounds like a repeat of that.
Yeah. But the Romans actually, what they did, they just came in and completely took over. They just attacked the Etruscans and took away all their rights and told them, now you will be Roman and you will no longer live as you did before. You will live according to our rules. So that's how that came about. But in talking about the first book of Mark, when Arius Calpurnius Piso, a.k.a. Josephus, his father, he wanted to pass that book to the Judeans. And he apparently had already started, because there are things that indicate in history that Nero found out that he was what Josephus' father was doing. And, well, he knew about it, and then his girlfriend, Nero's girlfriend, who was also a Jewish lady, she learned about it. And apparently some Jewish group or some, maybe could have been a Jewish priest or whatever, came to her and asked her help to please ask Nero to stop this. Do not let our people be indoctrinated into this new belief, about Jesus. And so she went to Nero and begged Nero to not allow that book to be spread to her people in Judea or anywhere else. And, why Nero didn't just say, mind your own business, I don't know, but he didn't, and maybe he was in love with the woman, I don't know, but that's when he decided to do some investigation, and he found out who was behind it. And then he went to, the leader of that group was, of course, Josephus' father, Gaius Calpurnius Piso, and he instructed him to cease and desist. And I guess he said okay, but a little while passed, and Nero found out that the man was still trying to push that new religion into Judea, and that's when he told him, take your life or I'll take it for you. You better do it yourself, because I think you're not going to like the way I do it. So he had Seneca and Arius Calpurnius Piso, a.k.a. Josephus' father, both had to commit suicide. And he took the family, the women of the Calpurnius Piso family, and he moved them out away from Rome into Turkey. But it's strange that he did not kill the boy who became Josephus. He did not kill Arius. But I think in reading that it was something about that attracted Nero to Arius is because he was highly intelligent. And I think that Nero had discussed some issues with him, and maybe that young Arius at that time had given Nero some very good advice, not knowing that he was giving him good advice to put his own self into a trap, where later Arius Piso would have the privilege of having Nero's, scribe, Epaphroditus, kill him. Nero did not die a natural death. He was killed. But that was hidden. But when you read the history and you read between the lines and you analyze it carefully, you realize that Arius Piso had control of Epaphroditus. I don't know what he had on him, but he must have had something that was, if he had told Nero, Nero would have killed him. So he went along with, in other words, he blackmailed him, and as soon as he killed, he poisoned Nero, and then they killed Epaphroditus so he couldn't talk.
Now, real quick, let me interrupt before I forget this. Isn't the website for people to go to Piso Christ, the book.webs.com?
Have you found that?
Yes.
Hmm.
Why?
Well, I didn't know about it. I know that Roman had told me that he was thinking about making a website, but I haven't been in touch with him for a couple of weeks, maybe more than that. And I know he has been somewhat ill, and I had no idea that he had maybe went ahead and been made that site.
Maybe one of y'all's followers
put one up. It's just PisoChrist.com, right?
Pardon me?
It's just PisoChrist.com.
PisoChristthebook.webs.com.
Oh, okay, I see. He must have attached that onto some other site then, Piso Christ, yeah. Dot web. No, Piso Christ, the book.
Yeah.
Okay, thebook.web.com. Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out because I haven't talked to him in some time.
That Webs has an S on the end of it, WEBS.
Webs, huh? Okay. Uh-huh. And have you looked at it? Is he saying anything new?
I didn't see anything new on it, but I didn't really spend much time there either. I just saw it and, copied it and put it on the intro, the description for the show, because I had assumed it was y'all's.
Well, yeah, if he made it, I guess, but I haven't seen it yet, and I'm going to see if I can look at that a little later, maybe today.
Well, in that case, listeners, I just put that link in the chat room. When y'all go there, just remember it may or may not be put up by the writers of the book, the authors of the book. That's not to say it ain't about the book now, mind you. There's a lot of times that people who have read the book will take and put up a website on it themselves if they can't find one in an effort to help the author get the word out.
Yeah.
Which is one of those cases.
Yeah. So I really don't know what Roman is doing these days because I really haven't been in touch with him for a while. So, but he had mentioned once before that he was going to try to make a website, and he wanted me to do it at the time, and this was some months back, and I told him I just didn't have the time to do it, and I was too busy. So he said he was going to try to do it, but he's been a bit under the weather as far as his health is concerned. So, but I'm going to see what I can find out, and maybe when I do, I can let you know.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Now we're fixing to go on break here in about 5 minutes or so, so we don't have a lot of time to get anything drawn out. But could you kind of brief us real quick on how far back does the Piso family tree go?
The Piso family tree? Wow.
Yeah, because I read in the book that the same family that wrote the New Testament were actually the authors of the Old Testament as well, only it was their ancestors that did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's what I have. I've actually been working on some of that myself, and I know Roman himself has also been working on some of that. But I am not too quick to make a decision on that. Not as Roman is. Sometimes he wants to blurt out things a little bit too quickly, and I've noticed him do that. He's not wrong very often, but sometimes he gets these things mixed up when he goes a little bit too far out on the limb too quickly. And when you do ancient history research, there are all sorts of red flags. If you've done it before, you're going to see the red flags as you go along. But some people, then there's the other thing called the red herrings. Now, the red herrings, as you know, they lead you astray. Red flag, you know, if you know something about ancient
false
history,
operation,
you're going to stop. Whoa, what's going on here? But when the red herrings, now a person is not maybe very skilled in doing research, but sometimes they follow that red herring, and I think Atwell did that for a while too. And because that is one of the reasons why I think Atwell never really found who Josephus really was. He mentions Josephus in his book, but he never comes out and says that Josephus was Arius Calpurnius Piso. And he has other ideas. I think he did not do enough research on Josephus. But he was basically got the idea to write his book from Josephus's work. So I think he didn't want to confuse anyone with coming up and stating that Arius Calpurnius Piso was Josephus. So that could be a reason why maybe he never really said that. He mentions Josephus, but he never says Josephus was not his name. His name was Arius Calpurnius Piso. So, but we did in our book, Piso Christ, and we explained all of the various names. And are you about ready to go on break now?
Not quite, almost. It'll be a couple of minutes. We'll hear a little music start in the background, and that'll be our signal.
Okay, then we will talk a little more about that when you come back on. And
right. Yeah, I asked you that question because I think I told you before, I've been doing a lot of study on this, either in books or online or through documentaries for some 25 plus years, maybe almost 30 myself. And, well, I kind of got the impression that Josephus was actually a descendant of Moses, but I can't prove it. It's the problem.
Well, you know, those people, here's the point. For example, the names, they change. They come from the same line of descendancy or inherited, but they are different names. For example, Piso. You will not find Piso today. You will not find that name. I don't believe you'll find that name anywhere in the world today. I have never heard of it mentioned anywhere in the world today. But because Piso, there were many reasons why he did not use his real. After his father was killed, he no longer used the name Piso. But he used...
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the music killing us. It's break time. Folks, right back here in about roughly 5 minutes. Now you can't get to go.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Hello, I'm Benjamin.
And I'm Jasmine.
We are inner tour guides with black belts in the art of self-awareness and how to live a passionate life.
We love talking with you about what you have and what you want.
More importantly, we want to explore with you how to bridge the gap between that wanting and bring it right back to the having.
So what are your hopes, dreams, and desires?
Is it money, love, success, health, wealth, or something even more specific?
Let us guide you through the exciting adventure of turning what you want into what you have.
Come join in the conversation on our show, The Inner Revolution.
We look forward to exploring with you.
Hey, Truther Junkies, it's me, Angela Black, and I'm back. Join me every weekday except for Wednesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern, Studio B on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com for my news show At This Moment 2014. See you there.
The finder of lost children and missing persons. Monique Lassan. Surveillance, civil and criminal investigations. I investigate.
No, I am the chosen one.
Do not underestimate the power of good, and do not dismiss the strength of the child.
Yes, every Wednesday evening on Revolution Radio, come join our very own Eye Investigatrix, Monique Lassan, with her private Eye X-Files.
So you're the finder of lost children?
Private Eye X-Files, every Wednesday from 10 to midnight Eastern, Studio B, on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
I realize it's very hard for you to take in. But it's your destiny to find the golden child.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Hey folks, you got the Nighthawk here. Do you have a favorite host? Well, imagine if you will having all the broadcast shows from 2013 to listen to anytime you want. Awesome deal, huh? Anyway, so stop by freedomslips.com and order the entire 2013 library of your favorite host for just $30. Not only do you help with the station funding to keep us on the air, you also help the host because they get half of the net on every order. Also, we have Revolution Radio's all-time favorite shows all on one disc. The details are really broad, so you'll have to visit the website and go look at the details yourself. It's, again, www.freedomslips.com/season2013.htm. And get your favorites. First come, first serve, 7 to 21 days for delivery. Thank you. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps, including me. Later.
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all!
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
He wants a challenge. Let's give him one.
The voice that whispers in your ears are the screams that you fear. The mind you cannot defy is the heart that rules mankind. The people who made you are the gods that will save you. I am Steve Travesty. I am the voice. The ghost in the machine. Ghost in the Machine. Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Studio A.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back, everybody. Once again, we're here today with Jay Gallus, and we're talking about the book, Piso Christ, and the topic matter of this book, like I said in the beginning of the show, is who wrote the New Testament. And I said earlier, who founded Christianity? And that's the way I understood the book to be. But I want to ask Jay to confirm I understood that correctly, because he said something about what I said earlier, and I just want to make sure I didn't have a misunderstanding. Now, I did correctly understand, didn't I, Jay, that part of that book was about who founded Christianity, right?
Yes, it was. Yes.
I got it right. I just, when you started asking what it was I had said, I wanted to make sure that I didn't get that wrong and you were catching on it and trying to correct me, in other words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want me to comment on that right now, I will.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. Well, okay, we'll just skip ahead. And then who founded Christianity was the one and only Arius Calpurnius Piso, a.k.a. Flavius Josephus. He was the leader. He was the founder. He and Pliny the Younger and Flavius Josephus's third son, Justus Calpurnius Piso. Justus Calpurnius Piso was a spitting image of his father in all of his actions and everything he does. when you study more about the man known as Flavius Josephus, who was actually Arius Calpurnius Piso, you will find that you're dealing with probably the greatest psychopath the world has ever known. And his son, Justice, was the same way. These people actually hated other people. They had no use for people, and everything was for them. And yes, he did find Christianity. It was about the year 96 when the last or third Flavian emperor was killed. That was Emperor Domitian, who was the second son of Vespasian, of Vespasianus, Titus's younger brother. Titus did not hold the emperorship but approximately 2 years, because he died some type of fever he must have picked up in one of his military combats someplace. And then his younger brother Domitian took over, and Domitian, while he did some good things, he was also a very terrible leader and did some very terrible things. He also, you dig into ancient history more, you'll find that Titus and, of course, Vespasian's brother was a grand uncle of Arius Calpurnius Piso, a.k.a. Flavius Josephus. So he was related to all of those royal people. And Titus, when he became emperor, he was very, very close to Arius Piso, or Josephus, if you like. And in those days, of course, you didn't have radio, you didn't have cell phones or fax machines or motion pictures or anything else, and like we have today. So most of the people in the Roman Empire had no idea what the Roman emperor looked like. Anybody could have walked up and said they were Titus or they were Vespasian, and they wouldn't have known. So there are many times that you'll find in history where it states that Titus said this, and Titus was here, and Titus was there. That was not actually Titus himself. It was Arius Calpurnius Piso co-ruling with Titus, who was traveling on behalf of Titus, pretending to be Titus. So, but when Titus died, Domitian, his younger brother, took over. Domitian and Arius Calpurnius Piso were never friends, and Domitian was not about to co-rule or allow Flavius Josephus to co-rule with him as his brother Titus had. So what he did, he had Arius Calpurnius Piso removed from Rome and sent him to live in what is today Asiatic Turkey, and where he had an estate there. But all the time he continued to write and prepare for the day when he would have the opportunity that would not get him killed, so that he would start a new religion. He waited and waited, and I guess it was the year 96 that he finally took it upon himself, and he had Domitian killed. He had the opportunity.
So he had plenty of time to write the material.
Oh yes, he was working on that, see, and at the same time waiting for the chance to get rid of Domitian. And I imagine he did that. He waited, and some of the older senators or other people who were close to Domitian, probably they wanted him out of the way too, but they must have been advising him, just wait a little more, and we'll let you know when the right time is. And when the right time came about, he had Domitian killed in 96. And then at that time, guess who became emperor? Trajan. And what was Trajan? How was Trajan connected to Josephus? Josephus was Trajan's father-in-law. He married Josephus's daughter Phoebe, and she is the woman that is talked about and lauded and respected so much in the book of Romans. When they talk about the lady in the book of Romans, they're talking about their sister. The writer is talking about his sister, because the writer of Romans was Proculus Piso, the youngest son of Arius Piso, and he's talking about his sister. But when Trajan took over, at that time, it is in history, reading history, you begin to realize that now Arius Calpurnius Piso and his family controlled the known world. They controlled everything because Trajan would not do anything to upset the old man. He was too dangerous. He knew it. And so Trajan just went about doing his work, and he was a good emperor. He did many good things for his people, and he allowed, of course, Arius Calpurnius Piso, a.k.a. Flavius Josephus, went about, he and Pliny the Younger and Piso's sons, they continued their writings, and of these, they wrote so many of these books and handed them out to the people, these very old new books that they had written, but they were telling the people that they were old.
Was one thing that was mentioned in your book, how they would put these books in the granary to make them appear old because the older books had more value. But before you go into that, Patrick in the chat room was asking, could you speak more directly into the mouthpiece? He said he was having a little trouble hearing you at the level of your voice. I see. Is this better, he thinks? Yeah, I think so. I have to wait and see what he says. Okay. But in the meantime, yeah, I remember reading that about throwing the books into the granary, but I think it had a dual purpose that the book didn't mention. One might be because it added value, but another one was it added more credibility. Well, that was the value. That was the value, see. Of course, the older the book is, the more likely the ignorant people would be to believe it. And the more that they could promote it and say things about it, they didn't have to prove it because they just say, well, it's right here in the book. I didn't write it, but they did write it. So, yes, they did that. They wrote and put these books and covered them in grain and left them for days or maybe weeks. And the grain gradually began to turn the book to a kind of a yellowish, the pages to a sort of a yellowish tint. And they passed them off as old books. And then, which, of course, especially when you're writing on parchment, it has a nice effect. That's right, see. Well, and after Domitian was killed off in 96, that's when Piso and his particularly his son Justus and Pliny the Younger went to work, and they established the first 7 churches, and you will find that in Revelation, and they were all in what is today Asiatic Turkey. Before that, there were no Christian churches nowhere, and there might have been a couple of, like Piso himself, Josephus, he may have had a small, maybe a room in his house. Maybe Justus might have had a room in his house. Pliny might have had a room in his house. And 2 or 3 people working with him might have had rooms in their houses where they were bringing in a few people that had maybe just enough sense to go out and talk a little bit about it to the other ignorant people to get them ready to be brought into the churches. So when they did open up in their churches in the year 98, and who were the people they pointed the religion toward, were the slaves and the ignorant masses. And they were totally indoctrinated. These people were people were like a person in the ocean drowning, and along floats a straw. I can imagine if I were in the ocean and tired and I knew I was going to drown, if a straw came along, I would try some way to stay afloat holding on to it. And that's what they did. They used this religion. They tried to tell the people, just be patient, turn the other cheek, and Jesus will save you. You will have heaven after death. You don't have to worry about this life. And it continues today. But the people who made the religion became absolutely filthy rich. And that is the reason why the Catholic Church is so rich today. And of course, the church and the empire by that time started to become one and the same. And I've read, Bill, that the Vatican is the single richest entity on the planet, richer even than Rothschild, and that Rothschild handles the money for the Vatican. Well, the banks, yeah, of course. They I don't know if Rothschild still does, but they did years ago. But then the Vatican had its own bank,
I think it was the Ambrosia, Bank of Ambrosia, or the Ambrosia Bank. And Ambrosia is supposed to mean something like wonderful or the very best. And but if you recall, think back at the first John Paul, the Pope, who was, I do believe to this day he was killed. He was Pope for 39 days, and he died. He was poisoned, and because they knew this man was smart, they wanted him to be emperor, but they were very, very afraid of him. And they just could not take any more chances. As some of the older cardinals, I guess, decided, man, we don't know what this guy's going to do. And if he talks too much, but actually some of the information apparently he had already divulged to someone, and he wanted to stop that bank. They did not want that to be done. There was a lot of money laundering going on, and had been going on for many, many years. And they did not want this to be known. So, but that Pope, the first John Paul, wanted to clean up the church completely and tell the people the truth. And if it wasn't the truth, don't tell it to them. Of course, the church would probably have been much smaller today had he lived, but it would have been something more on the line of Buddhism, and instead of this Jesus thing. But he was going to change that church completely. So they decided they needed an actor, and they got John Paul II to come in there after they killed the first one.
Well, now that you brought up that subject, if you don't mind a little bit of a slight detour, I just got to ask out of curiosity, what's your make on the newest Pope, St. Francis? Do you think they're going to try to put an end to him, too, with all the, waves that he's making?
Well, actually right now, I don't think that they really can unless they do it very, very, very well. But it's strange. This man is a lot smarter than they give him credit to be. And I see that because the church is in trouble. It is in very, very bad trouble. And he did not really want to take that job. But when he decided, okay, he would take it, I think he must have told the other cardinals that I have to make changes. We have to make changes. And they're going to be made very subtly, but and not very quickly, but over time. And we have to tell people certain things that they have not been told before. So now he goes out and speaks. As before, the church always said that gay people were, terrible. They were, the devil had control of them and so forth. It was all wrong and all of that. But today, he was asked, do you believe that gay people will die and go to heaven? And he says, you may go to heaven no matter who you are if you live your life in the proper way. So he did not say anything against them, whereas other popes have said many things against them. So,
yeah, but you have to admit the way he worded that, it was kind of like saying yes without saying yes.
Well, that's it. You see, he can't go too far out. But I think he's put himself out there at the point right now where I don't think that they're going to take any chances of trying to eliminate him, because I believe the world is watching this guy. The people, most of the older Catholics, the older people in the church, the members, they seem to really love this guy. I mean, he's like a breath of fresh air, and he is the first pope that has not come out of Europe, I believe. So,
now, didn't he come out of Italy?
Well, he's Italian, but that's where his ancestry is, from Italy. And his, I don't know, maybe it was his father, I don't know, or his grandfather. I don't believe it went any further than his grandfather had immigrated to Argentina, and so he was born in Argentina.
So there's a possibility that this new pope is really making drastic changes, and that not so much because he believes in the changes as it is that he's maybe trying to pull the Catholic Church out of a hole that it's in in the public eye, and then later on maybe revert to its old ways.
Well, possibly, but I don't think I don't see where he would try to pull it back to where it would be more reasonable for the to have it around. And but I think he's trying to get rid of all of the stigma about the church. That's what he's trying to. There's too much known about the church that is really very dirty, and he wants that to be eliminated, and he's trying his best to do that. And so he's even gone so far as, as I don't know if it's true or not, but it is claimed that he does not even live in the Vatican. He lives in a small apartment in Rome.
I read that just today.
And he also sometimes walks from his apartment to the church. And with Pope Mobile, sometimes they go to pick him up, but he says, no, I walk. And the little car will just drive along the street alongside of him while he walks and greets people and so forth. And he doesn't act like a pope.
I also hear that he's actually kissed the forehead of people with severely disfigured heads and faces and that. And I know that he actually sent a tape to Kenneth Copeland. I actually saw this video myself in which he was calling for reunification between the Protestant movement and the Catholic Church.
Who, the Pope was calling for this, or Pope?
Yeah, Pope Francis.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that I think he might be trying to do. It's possible maybe he thinks that if he can continue to be the nice guy long enough, maybe some of those people who had gone over to Methodist or maybe Lutheran is where a lot of the people that quit the Catholic Church go to, maybe they'll come back. So it's quite possible, but I don't think so. I think people, once they've gotten out of one of those churches and been with the second one for a long time, they very rarely change back again. So, and if anything,
no, they'll change to a different faith before they'll change back to the old one.
Yeah, but I think they, instead of going back to the old churches, they normally just quit altogether.
Yeah, I've seen that in a lot of cases. There's a filmmaker out of a video called The God Who Wasn't There. He was one that just left altogether. I think Robert Price is on the verge of it, but I can't swear to that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of them that they just said enough's enough. We just can't condone and support this as truth anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's you see. Here's another thing, though. When you go back into history and you study and you read all of these things about who wrote what, and you will find so much of these things written by under the name of Seneca. And if you do read some of these things, look in the book Piso Christ, and you will see so many names mentioned in there. And some of the modern scholars too, like for example, Professor Ronald Sim, who was connected with the Oxford University for many years. He was known to be the greatest authority on Roman history that ever lived, and he's one of the greatest writers on Roman history. And of course, he came out and was writing very closely. He knows what happened. He knows that NT story is not true, and he came out very closely in saying almost the same thing that Bruno Bear had said years before. But Bruno Bear came out, what he was talking about that the church and church, religion, and the government were all one and the same. And then, he was trying to get people ready to understand what he was really talking about. But he couldn't say it straight out. But I think he got tired of it, and he decided, to heck with it, I'm going to just tell it. And that's where he came out. And he said that, actually told him that Jesus was not true. And that's where the church, at that time having so much power, they jumped all over him and just lied about the man, and they got all the priests to preach about him in the churches, and he lost all of his credibility. The people believed the church. They schemed on him and lied about the man, so he could not dig his way back out of it. But what he told was the truth. So, and many people still believe that he was a crazy person, and what he wrote was really stupid. What he wrote was not stupid, and he wasn't crazy. He was a highly intelligent man, he had a lot of. He was very brave to come out with what he did, because he could have just been, the church could have just ordered somebody to grab him and just hang him up on the nearest pole, but instead they made a mockery out of him. but they made a mockery out of it.
Made him look like a fool to totally discredit him and say, there, nobody will pay attention to you.
Yes, and today I'd like to tell all of those people, if any of them or any of their ancestors are alive today, that think they made a mockery out of him, they better look at themselves and see what a mockery he made out of them, because they're the fools, not Bear. Bear was the man. He was like what is called an insider, and just as Ronald Sim was. Ronald Sim was like standing on the inside looking out at everything, where all of the other scholars of his time, they were so far from his ability and his knowledge that they were standing outside trying to peep in the window. You see, they just did not know what Sim knew. But he told enough, and probably nobody knows whatever happened to all of his papers. He must have left a lot of papers, but then there were a lot of people who wrote books based on Sims's work after he died. But
that same thing happened with a man named Kelsey who wrote the World's 16 Crucified Saviors. Everybody called him crazy at the time, too. But a lot of people are quoting them nowadays in their works, and there are still some that don't believe them. But the same phenomenon also happened with Alexander Hillsop.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone that says anything against the church is automatically crazy.
Oh yes, of course, the church jumps in it right away, and see what they do. They very quietly have the priests. The priests are always involved in politics. Anytime you go to a Catholic church, if you've been there, I've been many times. It's just thinking about what happened when I was 12 years old. No, I turned the desk over on top of the chief priest and told him where he could put that desk in his church, and walked out. But no, they pass the information around very quietly to all the priests and tell them what to talk about. And they're all going to.
And the priests preach it from the pulpit,
right,
and then the congregation members go out and start disinformation campaigns.
Well, no, first they have to get the communion with the little bread, or what is it? The
hot cross buns,
whatever they call it, and a sip of wine. And how many people drinks out of the same glass? I don't know. Have you noticed that?
Well, I thought when we did it in the Protestant movement, everybody had their own glass.
Yeah, everybody has a little glass sitting right in front of them, right? And but in the Catholic Church, no. You get out of your pew and you walk down to toward the altar, and you go to its one side. I think it's the left side, I believe. And you'll meet someone or the priest or some helper is handing out the little the bread. What do they call the little biscuits that they make? I forgot. But the little white thing, I forgot.
Little wafers, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Well, wafer. Yeah, wafer. That's a good name for it. And you can either put that in your hand, flip it in your mouth, or open your mouth and they'll put it in their mouth with their dirty hand, however you like. And
the way you put that.
You don't know. I mean, and he's shaking hands with people and touching so many things, and he picks us up and puts it in your mouth. No, thank you. And then you walk, after you get the wafer, you walk over a little further, and there's maybe 2 or 3 persons there that they each have a glass of wine, and everybody gets that wine, and they take a sip, and then they hand it back to the person that gave it to them, and the person wipes it with a towel or something and hands it to the next person. It couldn't possibly be sanitary. But
oh, my God. I am glad I'm not a Catholic because, well, I catch pneumonia real easy because of my lungs, and if somebody had pneumonia and drank out of that glass, and then I come behind them and grabbed it and drank out of it, I'd be in the hospital.
Well, you probably would if that's your situation. The first time you did it at a Catholic church, I'm sure you'd be in trouble. Because I don't understand why they are so cheap. If they're going to get people wine, get some little glasses, and just set them out there on a table. A bunch of glasses all filled with little shots of wine, and people can come by and pick it up themselves. But no, they don't. I don't know. They got somebody who comes along and fills up the little glasses. They all fill the glass about about 30%. Of what it can hold, and then they start passing around to people who already picked up the wafer. And then after that, you go sit down kneel down again in the pew, and they have the little things that you pull down so you can kneel down upon them right behind the seat that's in front of you. And I don't know, I guess they're praying they don't die from disease.
That'd be a good prayer right about then, I tell you.
You know, getting further into the book Piso Christ, I'm sure you wanted to get into this.
Right.
I want to get back to Aries Calpurnius Piso being Josephus now. And since, what was it? Nero, and after Nero, there were, 4 different emperors. And finally, Vespasian was the man who took the emperorship. And, Vespasian, since Arius Piso, who was known as, wrote as Flavius Josephus, and he was chosen. This man was also a military man, by the way, Josephus was. This man, he was any and everything you wanted to mention. I mean, he was a lawyer, he was a writer, he was a leader, he was a general in the Roman army. And he was the general at the time he was tearing down Jerusalem and the temple with Titus in the year 70. But when Vespasian came on the scene and took over the emperorship, he sent Piso, or Flavius Josephus, Arius Piso, to what was called at that time Pannonia, which was today would be Germany and Austria, in that area. And as the governor. Well, he was the governor and the military commander of the regiment that they had there. But as Vespasian was in Judea with his son Titus, and they had sent word from Rome that the military to Vespasian that the military has decided, and all the military leaders had decided that Vespasian should come to Rome and assume the leadership as the emperor. And so he did, and when he left, he came back to Rome. And when Muciano was another general. Muciano was in Rome at the time, and he was the man who was standing by to guard the city with his troops. And Muciano immediately sent word for, he sent word for Arius Piso, Josephus again, who was in Pannonia, to immediately report to Rome and to give his command to some other general. And he came to Rome, and at that time he took over the command of the Roman guards to secure the city for Vespasian's arrival. When Vespasian arrived in Rome, and he gave the order for Arius Piso, Josephus, to go to Judea and stand alongside of my son Titus. And he did that. But now going on further, this man, Arius Calpurnius Piso, you will find him, he wrote under many names. There's a name that you probably, I know you saw, Epictetus, and that that was actually Josephus, or Arius Calpurnius Piso. He wrote under so many names. He also used the name Montanus. And then you have the name of the Anaeverus. The Anaeverus was also a name that he made up. So that is why today that name Piso does not show in history, because he himself had it almost totally destroyed and eliminated by making up various names for himself. And his family did the same thing. Even his own sons used different names. So that is one of the reasons why it's so difficult to find out who this man really was. But
so him and his whole family have always operated in the background, kind of sort of like a shadow government.
Right, and then coming on in the later years, You've heard of Pope Gregory, I'm sure, and they were known. He came from the family known as the Gregorians, and now the Gregorians actually is a name. It sounds a little bit like Herodian, doesn't it? And it was, because those ancestors, or descendants, that is, of the Herodians began to change their names from Herod to Gregory or to Gregorian. So that Pope Gregory was a descendant of the hugely rich and powerful family known as Gregorian.
So for all we know, the Rothschilds and Rockefellers of the day could also be branches of that same family.
It's possible. I don't. Yes, it's possible. It's possible.
That's just, again, speculation. But you know what? That'd be interesting to research and find out, wouldn't it?
It would be. And I'll tell you another thing. If you're going to do something like that, what you need to do is to stick close to the royalty. Stick close to the royal families. They're all intermingled. They're all related in some way. And because they have something that they don't want to let go, and they want to protect it. It's just like, if, for example, the British Crown. And those boys, those young princes, they're not allowed to just marry anybody they want to. And so I don't know what's his Prince William, his wife, I can't remember her name. I don't know what her background really is. Is she some aristocrat? I guess she's from an aristocratic family, isn't she?
I'm not sure. You're talking about the wife that replaced Diana?
Yeah, I'm talking about Diana's son, William, his new wife.
Okay.
You know,
Okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah, I don't know if you're talking about, what's his name, Charles, his new wife. No,
I keep getting those names mixed up.
I'm talking about his son, William.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then, there again, you go back to the little country there, or little principality. What is it in France? The prince. What's his name? Prince Edward now is the prince over there. The guy who married, what's the actress's name? What was her name? I forgot. She was an actress. He married her when she turned down. She quit acting just to marry Prince Rainier.
Oh, I've heard of that name, but I don't know who.
Yeah, I can't think of the principality name at the moment. But anyway, his son Edward is now the prince there. Well, he married this U.S. American actress. I can't think of her name. She played in movies with Sinatra, Bing Crosby, and she was going to be the next really great actress, but she gave it all up to marry Prince Rainier. Her family was very wealthy, and there had been some talk that her family were related to certain royal families. So that's one of the reasons why he chose her. So they tried to stay as close to one another as possible, and they don't care what their bloodline is, what the nationality is. It doesn't matter. As long as they are royal or considered to be royal, then it's okay for them to marry. So they keep the big lie going, because originally, I'm absolutely certain that this God concept was made up by royal people who had the royal power or wanted to have it, and they decided the way to do it and to keep it was to fool the ignorant people and make them afraid and tell them that God was watching them and that God had sent them there to be their leader. And if you do not obey me, then God is going to show you his wrath. So, and then in order to keep them completely delusional and to obey, they wrote books and told them that this was all written by God and they had better listen and do what God tells them. Of course, God was the ruler and God at the same time. So, and religion, then they made religion. So that's why today, if you see any of these royal people now getting married, there's always, the church is always right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always.
Well, the church is the one who sponsored marriage anyway.
Well, yeah, of course. And they get married in the church, and they put the crown upon the person who's being crowned, etc. So, so they're all working hand in hand. They're helping each other. The church needs the royal family. The royal family needs the church. But today, I think the royal family needs the church a little more than the church needs them. But this guy, Arius Calpurnius Piso, wrote under very many names. There's no telling you, if you read this book, Piso Christ, you would be astounded at the number of names that he used. That's why his family name changed. And, for example, Suetonius. Suetonius was another writer, a magnificent writer. And he is one of the people who actually mentioned Jesus. But it was anybody who mentioned Jesus, like Flavius Josephus and Suetonius and I believe Pliny, those people mentioned it because it was to their advantage. They were promoting the lie. That's why they mentioned it. They were advertising it. They were trying to make Jesus seem to be real.
Right.
So, Suetonius was he who actually, that was not his real name. His real name was Antoninus Pius.
Okay.
Antoninus Pius became emperor. He was emperor. And guess who his grandfather was? None other than the same Arius Calpurnius Piso, a.k.a. Flavius Josephus. And Marcus Aurelius was emperor after Antoninus. And guess what connection Marcus Aurelius had to Josephus, a.k.a. Josephus, Arius Calpurnius Piso. Marcus Aurelius was a great-grandson of Arius Calpurnius Piso. You see, after they took over, when they killed Domitian and Trajan came in, they took over and they never turned that power loose. They continued to maintain that power. So, when the hordes came over from the Middle East and raided Rome, I'm sure that they took all of the money they had and put it into the church and hid it so it wasn't stolen. That's one of the reasons why the Catholic Church is so rich today. But, of course, that money was all part of the family money. And who knows where it all went. I mean, the church itself, right there in Rome, probably makes more than $400 million a year, and just in Rome alone.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and then that one church, and just in the Vatican, they make $400 million a year. They don't pay any taxes. And do you know that the one thing you said is the Catholic Church is one of the richest organizations in the world, and I believe that the Catholic Church is the largest single landowner in the United States.
I've read that. Now, I wanted to let you. Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to let you know that you have a caller on the line.
Hey, yes, join the discussion. I'd like to help out. The name you were looking for was Grace Kelly. She married the Prince Rainier of Monaco.
That's correct. Absolutely. Thank you. You're correct. Grace Kelly. Yeah, that's the lady I could not think about. Who
is this, Patrick?
She was beautiful too. Yes.
Oh yes,
gorgeous.
She was absolutely beautiful, and she gave up her soon to be the actress above all of them. She was definitely going to take over to be the queen of all. But she was a beautiful woman, beautiful. And
wasn't she? She was killed in a car wreck, just like Diana.
She was
murdered. She was murdered to punish Prince Rainier.
You think she was murdered?
That's the rumor.
She was
similar fashion.
She was in her 50s at that time, I believe.
I thought she died young. I could be mistaken.
Yes,
or relatively young.
I don't know. She may have.
Well, I'm 50. I guess you could say that's young.
Well, yeah, she might have been maybe in her late 40s. I remember I was working for a newspaper at that time, and when the news came in, and I was it fell upon me to take the lead and to develop the story for them. And of course, I was working for.
You know the background of Monaco, right? It's like the money laundering center of Europe, and I think the prince got a little too greedy, and so they wanted to, set an example, get him to kind of rein him in, and so they took her out.
What kind of an example or message was that sending to him?
Well, he was getting too greedy, and they wanted him to just back off. He posed some type of threat, from what I've heard, from what I've studied.
Well, who was he stealing from?
The cartel. They were drug. Monaco was a money laundering.
He was charging a bit too much. Is that it?
Probably. He could have been doing a number of things, but they didn't appreciate it, so they took her out.
Wow, I thought he was a very smart man.
Apparently not smart enough. Well, smart enough to stop.
I would have said, well, fellows, let's sit down and talk a little bit about this. I'm sure we can work this out. And so instead of charging them 25 cents on the dollar, well, all right, so 20 cents. And
negotiate.
That's the first time I've heard that story. That's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's a new spin on an old story.
Yeah, thank you for helping me remember Grace Kelly and what is it?
Prince Rainier of Monaco.
Yeah, Prince Rainier of Monaco. Monaco, yes, that's right. The Principality of Monaco. He has to have a. Is he required to have a male heir to succeed him?
I don't know, but that's the usual fashion. In most royal societies, but maybe the male is preferred.
Yeah, I know, but
they don't have
the principality, he was awarded to him by the French government to his family many years ago, and it's not very much property anyway. But they allowed the family to continue to maintain it and do whatever they wanted to do with it. But they had to have a family heir take over every time the old person dies. And that's why he had to get married. He was already in his 40s, I think, when he married Rainier, and he didn't have any children. So, I
thought they had children. I thought they did.
The only children he had were by Grace Kelly. They had 3 children, 2 girls and the boy Edward. Edward was the youngest.
Right. Well, wouldn't they be eligible for the succession? Wouldn't his sons be eligible?
Oh yeah, Edward, yeah. But that's I was often wondering, why the oldest girl did not step in. But I guess they were all children at the time, and then of course Edward grew up, and I guess if they have a male heir, he will take over. But if not, I think maybe the girl can come in as a princess and take over.
Right.
I'm not quite sure. But they have to have a family bloodline heir, or the property reverts back to France. Yeah, it would probably. But France is not going to let Monaco go. They bring in millions and millions of dollars every year with tourists and all that. So they'll definitely keep it. They'll keep that name and keep it going if they have to come and get me to take over for them, which I'll gladly do.
That's a nice cover for the true purpose, the underground economy.
Yeah. That's
but I'll back up. I don't want to throw you off your discussion. I don't want to just focus on Monaco, so I'll let you continue. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah, this is 808, 308.
What did he say?
808, 308.
Free and awake?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's a Will Power in the chat room saying Grace Kelly, so I thought you was him.
Oh, no. I guess I beat him to the punch.
Yeah, I guess you did. Yeah. Okay. Well, I remember seeing you on my last show, Free and Awake, in the chat room.
Yeah, with Georgia, her book, yes.
I do remember you were there.
That's right, yeah. But anyway, I'll listen. I don't want to throw him off track and continue the discussion. Such things are falling apart in my movie. I got to take care of it. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
Take care, guys. All right. Bye-bye.
I don't know. We don't have very much time left, but I just want to leave you with a couple of more notes. Royce?
Okay, I was fixing to ask you if you wanted to have anything to talk about that I didn't think to cover, but you're beating me to the punch.
Okay, yeah. Let's see what I was talking about the lineage coming from Aries Calpurnius Piso, a.k.a. Flavius Josephus, and that Suetonius, the man who wrote as Suetonius, was actually Antoninus Pius, who became emperor. He was a grandson of Aries Piso. And then following him was Marcus Aurelius, and Aurelius was a great-grandson. And all of those people who wrote as church fathers, they were either his sons or his grandsons or his great-grandsons who wrote all of those so-called church fathers' books and records and information for the church. They wrote
commentaries, all of it.
Every bit of it, they wrote it. The Apocrypha, the Septuagint, everything they wrote themselves. And all of it was written by those people. And something else I was going to maybe, yeah. Oh, it's this man, Antoninus, who wrote as Suetonius. He was, as you can see, he called himself Antoninus Pius. He never mentioned Piso. So he not only, at the time he was emperor, he was also Pope of the Church. Pope of the Church and emperor at the same time. And I believe he may have been the first emperor and maybe the last that held both of those positions at the same time. Because it was his family's business. It was their business. He wasn't going to turn it over to some yokel to steal from them. They wanted to do all the stealing themselves. So, but
there is a passage I see online on a regular basis. I can't remember who it was that said it was one of the early church fathers or one of the popes. It said, "Oh, how profitable this myth or this fantasy about Jesus Christ has been," or something to that effect.
I believe that would be Pope Leo X, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
But you got to realize there's a clue to us people here, you and me, everybody that's listening in, that if a pope himself said it, then you guys are probably onto the real truth of the matter.
Of course, they all knew. They all knew. They were related. These people were all related back to the Piso family. And to the man known as, who wrote as Flavius Josephus. They were all related to him. They were descendants of that tribe of people of that heritage. So they all knew. But this Pope Leo was talking to his, I believe it was a nephew, who was at the time a cardinal himself, and mentioned to him that how well we have done with the myth of Jesus.
something to that effect.
Yeah,
another note that I would personally like to make sure people get that I didn't see you cover yet is the fact that even Constantine, the guy that finally legalized Christianity, was also a member of the same family.
Absolutely. Yes. He was. I was just getting onto something like that. I'm really not prepared to speak on that right now. But Constantine's brother was one of the people who was very much involved in that church business. And but Constantine, don't fool yourself. He looked around one day and he saw where, man, all of the masses out here, the ignorants out here, the slaves, everybody, they're all getting into this, new religion thing. So, he figured, that's not going to bother us, but maybe we should get everybody involved in this. Then we can get them all to fight for the empire. You see, so it was a political move that he made when he called that meeting for the meeting of Nicaea, where they decided what was going to be put into the Bible and what was not. So he selected. He was the one who decided on all the books that would be put into it. But I believe there was a couple of emperors after him that actually decided that Christianity would be the actual religion of the Roman Empire. But that emperor you were talking about, he was never a Christian. He didn't believe in it, and he only did it as a political gambit. That's all it was.
Okay. Now, I wanted to let you know that Patrick in the chat room said the actual quote was, this Jesus myth has served us well. And I brought that myth up, that quote for a reason, because you say, and Roman Piso both say, y'all call this a a Jesus myth or a Christ myth yourself. So y'all are using terms that was already used by Pope Leo, in other words.
Christ myth?
I think y'all called it y'all said it was a Jesus myth, or y'all said the New Testament was a myth. I'd have to go back and reread it. I've done some other reading since then.
In the book Piso Christ?
Yeah.
Christ myth?
I believe I remember y'all talked about Christianity being a myth, or the New Testament books, or the story of Jesus being a myth.
I don't know. I don't recall that being there, but it might be in there. I know there are a lot of different things in there, but the book is not very big, but there is a lot of things in it. And I do hope to take this book one day and rewrite it and expand upon it and make it about 3 times its size. And then we have much more material that we're working on now, and hopefully we can have other books coming out. And the one book that I really that we already decided on the name was, I think, and Roman has been working on this for several years, and I've been corresponding with him about it. And the name, I think, will be the Synthesis of Christianity. So it goes very, very deep into how the church was started, and even farther back into the ancient times. So...
well, you're going to come back on my show here and tell everybody about it when it comes out, aren't you?
Oh, definitely. I certainly will. When I find out any more about it, you'll be one of the first people I will notify that more information is out, and it's going to be under the name of such and such. And you let me know when you've got room for me to come on, and I will lock up all my dogs so they won't make noise. They're not making any noise right now because I've got them all. I've got towels wrapped around their noses.
Okay, well, I'll do that. But right now, they're fixing to drown us out with music, letting us know it's the end of the show. Thank you very much. Really do appreciate this.
Yes, and I do appreciate it too, and I thank all the people who are there and everyone who's listening. I hope that you have at least learned a few things today, and I thank all the people who wanted to help me with the Monaco thing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Roy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started?
Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener support.